Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar. Good afternoon. This is another webinar of the series of the Career Week at AUIS. Today, we are hosting Mr. Azos Rashid, the CEO of IQ Online, which is a leading fiber infrastructure in Iraq and a partner of the AUIS, the 2021 AUIS Career Week. Mr. Azos, we are so glad to have you with us today. Mr. Azos will be speaking about the ISP and tech industry in Iraq and the career opportunities in that path. Mr. Azos, I'd like to give you the platform to introduce yourself and then introduce IQ Online to us as well. Please.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. To be honest, the tech sector and the communication sector, everyone thinks about the oil sector being probably the most important sector in Iraq. It is to a certain degree, but it's the tech sector and the communication sector which is really at the forefront for the country and is leading the private sector. So it's a pleasure for me to be hosted by you guys. And I'll give you a brief of my ideas and where I think it's going and the problems facing the country and the caliber of people that we're looking for our staff. So let me start by sharing the documents. So IQ Online, established Kurdish company. We partner with the Iraqi government in Iraq and the KRG. We provide fiber to the homes. We are a leading fiber internet service provider. We provide great speeds. We provide fiber to the home. We provide speeds and prices which are actually unmatched in most of the world, but people still do like to complain. We wouldn't be Kurds and Middle Easterners if we didn't like to complain. But honestly, if you compare some of our speeds to the rest of even the Western world, we are up there. We do face a problem of lag because the big servers and for example, the gaming sector don't have their equipment here. So the gamers who agreed onto their own love complaining about it, but it is something that we're working on, bringing technology, gaming, entertainment, speed, all back to the country. So, tech and the future. Obviously, we live in a country with very nice neighbors and political instabilities, both within the country and outside. Iraq is blessed by natural resources, but it's cursed by the reaction and the developing of these natural resources. But I don't want Iraqis and Kurds and students which are embarking on their career path to think of themselves as victims. The world is changing, and the problems that we face in Iraq and Kurdistan, and I'm going to use Iraq and Kurdistan simultaneously because it's very similar problems. All the problems that we face, I think, have tech solutions, whether it's economic problems, environmental problems, social problems, political problems, whether it's corruption, these can all be solved with tech. But let's not kid ourselves. Iraq is behind. We're decades behind. The government, both in the KRG and Baghdad, are trying, and they talk a good game. However, let's look at two or three of the biggest, let's say, tech companies in the country, Karim and Lezu, for example. Great startup, but it's still cash-based. There's no online platforms. The ecosystems don't speak to each other. We can't, I mean, this always makes me laugh. We talk about digitizing and e-governance and all these things, but we can't even use emails as proof in the court of law. So we have got huge issues that we need to address. And we can address this through changing the mindset of the youth, incorporating solutions to these problems at a private level. Because honestly, what annoys me in the Middle East is we're constantly looking towards the government to solve our issues rather than we come to the government with a solution. The government they have their own problems, but it would be great if we can provide them with solutions. So let's take ourselves seriously and say we're not as good as we should be and not believe our own hype. Technological revolutions happening throughout the world, and we will be left behind if we don't start thinking about how to incorporate, whether it's university degrees, whether it's whether it's sectors, for example, the manufacturing sector, entertainment sector, finance, health. A lot of these big sectors, which were standalone sectors in the past, now depend on technology. So it's not just the technology of building. I mean, we go for this solution of, is there an app for that? But it really is getting like that, where the technology is leading other industries. And when I talk about technology, it's not just coding, it's artificial intelligence, it is blockchain technology, it is payment solutions. There's so many things out there. Technology is a beautiful wide spectrum, but we are being left behind because the legal infrastructure isn't here. Even some of the mindsets, there's a lot of concepts in the West that just don't exist. In the Kurdish language or the Arabic language, the concepts don't exist. So it's very hard to teach people. That's where the AUIS is at an advantage, because your curriculum is very heavily based on the English language. So these concepts can be put forward to your students. However, the students also, and I'm talking on a broader range, not just AUIS, a lot of technology taught in schools and universities and educational facilities are legacy technologies. They're not the technologies that we currently need, or even more importantly, what we need in 5 years or 10 years' time. When you go to an MIT or a leading establishment in the world, they're teaching you concepts which are going to be used in 5 years or 10 years' time. Unfortunately, in Iraq and in the Middle East, they're doing things which are 5, 10, sometimes even 15, 20 years old. Languages, coding languages, some of them just don't exist anymore. They're teaching our students. So by the time they come to me, I have to re-teach them and tell them, forget everything you learned from at university the last 3 years, and then we put you on a crash course. AUIS is obviously a little bit different, but still AUIS, the students need to really push. You guys need to tell lecturers, look, the world is heading in this direction. We want to learn this. So, IQ Online, we want to be part of the solution. Everyone can complain about it, like I said, but we are working currently on digital solutions and applications and technological tools. I'm taking IQ Online from just being a fiber optics and internet company to a full-on tech company. We've established a digital department, a development department. We're looking to doing a research department. And we're working on some very exciting things. So there is a career path with us. However, I can't tell you half of these things because they're top secret. But they are exciting initiatives, and they're the ground level initiatives. These are things which I want to change the fabric of the industry and society in the country. So let's look at the Iraqi market in general. There is a burden on the telecommunications sector, like I said. We are one of the leading sectors in the country. And we're one of the few, if not only, sectors that is really hiring outside the government. And that puts a big burden on us. And we're one of the few sectors which are paying back into the country. We need the tech sector to grow if Iraq and Kurdistan is to survive, because we can't just rely on oil and natural resources. That's a dying industry. We need to be thinking 20 years, 30 years, 50 years in advance. We need to be thinking of our grandchildren now. There aren't going to be refinery jobs soon. So there will be data-driven jobs. However, there is a glass ceiling. A lot of companies in Iraq, and I've seen it as well with the AUIS, when you bring in some fantastic world-leading people to give advice. And that's great because they're sharing their knowledge. But unfortunately, in a lot of the companies that I've seen and I've been part of, bringing expats creates a glass ceiling, because then that knowledge isn't trickling down. And that is my job as a CEO, and that's other CEOs' jobs, to make sure that education, that knowledge trickles down to the staff. Because it's not just what you learn in university, it's what you do learn in the work experience. For example, right now, I am bending over backwards to try and find a data analyst, a world-class leading data analyst. I can't. And when I say I need a data analyst, I want a data analyst so I can compete with Google, because that's my aspirations. I want to compete with the world's leading companies. I don't want to box myself into Soleimani, KRG, Iraq, or the Middle East. I want to be world leading. And to be world leading, I need world leading minds. So I need to mold and create you. Institutions like the AUIS will give you the foundations, but I need to put the finishing touches. So let's talk about a career. Institutions and social media are selling a wonderful dream. We speak to people talking about what the perfect resume is and what the perfect, what's the word, interview processes are. But honestly, the Iraqi and the Kurdistan market is completely different. You may have the best resume and the best techniques in the interview process, but is the HR manager who is interviewing you even aware of what you're talking about? So you really have to be different. You have to put in the consideration of where you are. I have had, I'll show you this. There's all these AUIS over the last few weeks. CVs sent to me directly, got nothing to do with the HR process. And to be honest, I take a glance at them and I throw them in the bin mostly, because I want the company to be built on merit. And it is for your students to really take a grasp of what a company, for example, like IQ, like AsiaCell, like Zain, like Noros and our competitors, what we actually do and what we need and how you can add value. Don't think of this as a job, think of this as a career. Students, to be honest, when they come to us, think they're not prepared. I make them work hard. They think it's an overnight success. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Students come to us with an aspiration which is really unattainable, especially from institutions like the AUIS. I've had students there asking for 3 times the salary of somebody else. And I'm looking at them saying, you've just graduated. Small steps. However, honestly, hard work pays off. Kurdistan and the Middle East is suffering from work ethic, and I see this through people. For every 10 people I interview, 1 of them is worth their weight in gold. And why are they worth their weight in gold? They may not be polished, they may not be the the finished article, but they have the right work ethic. They don't have entitlement issues. They have consistency, they have hard work, and money isn't the overall goal of what they're trying to achieve in the job space. Money comes, success comes, but you work for it. You need to know the organization. I mean, people come to IQ sometimes and they don't even know what we do, and they expect a job. So you really need to get a grasp of not just the organization, but the industry. I mean, I look at myself, I have had everything handed to me on a silver platter. I have been entitled, my family is successful, everything's been gifted to me. But I still work hard. I have to work hard to succeed. You can't depend on other people. You can't depend on this Wasta mentality, because it is for us to break that tradition. It is for us to move forward, because you know what, if you want to, if you're happy with that, go and get a government job where you drink tea for 3 of the 4 hours that you work. But if you really want to make your mark, you do want to move forward with changing an industry, leaving your mark on a department, on a job, on a project, then be humble and come forward with ideas, and people listen, because we need it. We need everything in this country. Like I said, everything can be solved with technology. So that's the end of my presentation. Feel free to ask me questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Azos. That was very elaborate. I have several questions that I will ask. We'll have a casual conversation, I hope, and then we'll wait for the audience if they have any questions. My first question is obviously is about the fresh graduates. Some fresh graduates, or in general, people believe that it could be very difficult to penetrate as an employee into the ISP and telecommunications career, because we have the companies we have here, especially in KRG, there are massive companies, like yourselves, like Azos, like Korak. These are massive companies, and people believe that you need some prior experience in order to penetrate as an employee. What do you think about this? Is it really that difficult?
Yes and no. You need a knowledge, you need a base.
Okay.
And like I said, we get a lot of people coming through, which I offer them internships for 3 months, 6 months. They don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. But they don't think, if I put them on the right course to be, for example, an IP engineer, that opens the gate for jobs, not just within the country, it's within the region, within Germany, within UK, within Silicon Valley. So just because you have that piece of paper, that certificate from the AUIS, while it is very important, it doesn't mean that you can walk into any job. You start from the bottom and make your way to the top. Mm-hmm. But we're in desperate need. I mean, for example, AsiaCell is growing by the day. Noros is growing by the day. Fastlink is growing by the day. IQ is growing by the day. We need hungry, talented people. And competition is good. I mean, competition between companies is a fantastic thing, because it moves the sector forward.
Absolutely. Great, thank you. So you touched on certificates and personal development as well. I'd like to just ask to see how much do certificates apart from the university certificates. Obviously, in IT, there are numerous certificates you can get online, outside. I would just like to touch on how important those certificates are for IT graduates, especially in your industry.
They are very important, but like I said, I mean, for example, a company like IQ, we have got so many different branches within our tech department. We have got actual hands-on tech people, we've got engineers, we've got developers, we've got data analysts, we've got control experts. So if you want to pick a field, focus on it, do your certifications. If you want to be more generalized, that's fine. But be willing to learn and grow within the organization. It's, you know, it's a game of patience. You will grow because we need you, but you need to grow. We need to help you grow.
Absolutely. Kagasos, you talked about several problems facing Iraq and KRG. In general, the problems, they're very, very, how should I say it? They're major problems that we are facing. And it's not up to the individuals to fix those problems, but what do you think on individual levels? For example, a fresh graduate or someone going to be a graduate, what do you think they can do to help solve these problems?
Well, you said it may not be on an individual basis to help solve these problems, but I think it can be. Firstly, I think everyone should take the responsibility. I mean, a lot of people complain about the government not doing this and not doing that, but they don't have any options or viable options in place. Like I said, everything can be solved through technology. You can do startups, you can do things in your part-time. You can, I've set up a new initiative within the company where people come up with ideas and we do a joint venture with that individual outside of IQ scope. You know, there is a need for this. But also, don't shy away from the problems. We don't need yes men. We don't need people to constantly agree with me. I hate it when people, I go into a meeting sometimes and I say, what should we do with this? And actually the ethos of IQ is changing and I'm trying to change it. But in the beginning, I'd go into a meeting, what should we do in terms of X, Y, Z? And it's not for me to make the decisions because I'm not an expert in everything. I need to delegate these tasks. I need people giving me different options, different solutions, and don't shy away from it. One of the things that everybody can do is to stop wasters.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is, the amount of people I get in my office saying, Kagas, and you know, I never ask for anything and I've never done it. I know a waster's coming. The second they say I never asked for anything, it means you're going to ask for something. You know? So
I believe education plays a huge part in that.
We need meritocracy. I mean, a lot of people will look at myself. I would look at myself if I was from the outside perspective and say, well, he's just put in there for X, Y, Z reasons because of who he is. Maybe I've had these opportunities, but also I've got a CV and I've been successful outside of Kurdistan. I've done my own things and I'm proud of my achievements and I've worked hard for it. And I do think I'm in the right position. And like I said, the world is changing. Kurdistan is changing. People are fed up of this, of nepotism. It should be on merit. And I put myself in that situation as well. If another guy comes in and I think he's the right CEO candidate, I would gladly give up the seat for him. And that is how we should think. Don't hoard knowledge. Spread knowledge. If the sector grows, there's room for everybody to grow.
Absolutely.
It's not the individual.
Absolutely. And this is something that we quite focus on at AUIS. The first thing in their orientation days when students join us, the first thing they notice is that we keep speaking about the ethics of being a student, how not to plagiarize, how to be authentic. I think taking that path maybe helps people when they graduate, they still practice those ethics. Kagasos, we have several questions from the audience. I'd like to read them for you, if you don't mind. First, it says, what tech fields should undergraduates try to specialize, in your opinion? As in, which tech fields have a job market in the KRG?
Honestly, everything. But you look at specific areas where there's growth internationally, like cloud-based development, data and analysis. Google isn't a search engine. Google is a data company. They sell your data, they package it, sell it. Facebook, the same thing. You know, look at what's happening in the world and scratch beyond the surface. Tesla isn't a car company. Tesla is a software company, which is by means the machine it's added to is a car. You know, Uber isn't a taxi company. Uber is a software company. Look at these examples. Don't just take it at face value. Look deeper into it. Things like I said, data engineers, cloud-based software, coders, app developers. These things are all needed.
Absolutely. Perfect. We have another question from Kojin Idris. He says, I hope IT keeps growing and lead Iraq network to improve broadband all over Iraq. And his question is that, do you see Starlink as a game changer, at least in Iraq, since it promises lower latency?
Yes and no. It's a great concept, but when you have hardwired internet into your property, nothing can beat that. It's the most stable medium out there for communications. And if it was up to me, purely from a commercial aspect, I'd have every house, every business, every person connected hardwired to the IQ network, but we can't. And there's licensing issues and there's all kinds of issues. But Elon Musk is a great example of somebody who sees a problem and tries and creates a solution. Whether the solution he thinks of for himself or packages it to look like it's come from him, that's a different question. But it's a solutions-based, he's a solutions-based guy, and that is what Iraq needs. It needs pioneers and visionaries.
Perfect. Kaka Azos, I have several other questions, and we will conclude it very soon. I'd like to just in detail ask you, how up to date do you think Iraq is in terms of tech? Obviously, you touched on this, but if possible, I would like to go into detail. And the reason I want to do that is because usually we have many students at AUIS who are looking to go outside of Iraq. I'd just like to see if this is a viable option for students, both for education and also work. So I'd like to do that comparison if possible.
Firstly, it's a big ask for me to try and persuade students not to leave Iraq, because that is one of the biggest problems this country is facing. And I know their lives could be better abroad, but it could also be worse because the competition is much harder abroad. But you can set your stamp on an industry or a job or a project in Kurdistan, in Iraq, easier, let's say, in lack of a better word, than you would outside. So firstly, I would urge all students thinking about moving abroad to really think about it. We can change Kurdistan, Iraq within years. You don't need a life, so you don't need generations. So that's firstly. Secondly is Iraq is behind, Kurdistan is behind. Like I said, for all talk of whatever we don't have an electronic banking system. The laws don't protect intellectual property to the level it should do. I mean, entertainment, you can steal copyright, you can steal, for example, Adnan Karim, poor guy, spends his whole time, singing, doing this, and people just plagiarize and steal it.
Absolutely.
You have to think of these issues, and these are all tech-related issues, because if somebody's not monetizing or making money from their idea or from their craft, then what's the point? And that is another area that I would suggest your students to look at. Don't just come up with an idea. The idea is great, but think about how to monetize it. Because before Facebook, there was dozens of platforms before Facebook, and some of them were even better than Facebook. But why is Facebook where it is? It's because it's monetized. It's monetized this platform to the best way it can.
Very true. We have another question from the audience, Mr. Azos, and from Kak Anas, saying, how can one go about and get an internship at a company like IQ? Generally speaking, what are the qualifications, IT-related internships, that is?
We do need a general base, but you don't need to be an expert for an internship. And just apply to our HR department. We're constantly, find us on LinkedIn, come to our showroom, ask, bring in your CV. We do programs like that. And there's no shame in it. Instead of, it makes me laugh. For example, the Wasta, you'll go and ask your uncle or cousin who may have a link to somewhere. But if you're going to ask someone, ask them directly, come by.
It's true that you mentioned that. It's funny that some people have the courage to do the wasta, but they don't have the courage to go to the place and then apply for themselves. Absolutely, I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Azos, thank you so much for being here with us today. We were very lucky to have you. That concludes our questions. Oh, sorry, I have another question saying, where is your IQ showroom?
IQ showroom is opposite Ram Gallery.
Mr. Azos?
Yeah. Hello?
Oh, I think we lost Mr.
I can hear you.
Okay, everyone.
No.
Thank you so much for.
I can hear you.